Mambo Vipi, what's happening? My name is Anyiko Owoko and I am a lover of arts, culture and everything African. And here we grant you front row access to your favorite celebrities, creators, the biggest personalities and industry experts. Come with me, you're now a VIP. Here's why you need to stick around for the entire episode this week.
Overall sort of phrase is intellectual property or IP. So that's the discipline within law that helps us to protect the creations of our mind. And what does that mean? It focuses on intangible property, things you cannot see, feel, touch.
Copyright laws are territorial. Every country has its own copyright laws. However, the Berne Convention sets the minimum standards. If you create a copyright work here in Kenya, it is protected in those other Berne Convention member states internationally, if I would say that.
People get clearances. When P-Unit was releasing You Guy, we had to seek clearance from Jamaica. We reached out to Chakademus and Plies for them to allow P-Unit to use You Guy. So when you tell me that people right now are just jumping on a track for Jua Kali that was released in 2001, the only reason as to why Jua Kali is not reacting and all these other artists are not reacting on you guys doing urban tone on their tracks is because you guys have a cancel culture.
So many free resources out there that even if it's a lawyer you don't want to hire, it's okay, sawa. You don't want to give us money, fine, it's okay. There's a class I taught, it's called Copyright X, and it's a free class from Harvard. The Bachman Center runs that class and they've put all the 12 lectures online. At the time when I was teaching that class, it was being run by the Go Down and an institution called Code IP. It's a free resource. So Copyright X is online. Please go to copyx.org and just learn.
Welcome back to VIP Access. This is episode 3 of season 5 of this podcast. And remember, this season is all about how to move the industry forward. Season 5 of VIP Access is powered by Industry Talks, which is an event that happens at the Gachui Institute. Over the past 2 years, we've had an amazing run and amazing events that were covering different aspects of the industry, the challenges that we are facing in the creative sector. And we have repurposed all these conversations into this podcast, and that will be what you'll be listening to throughout this season. Before we get into Industry Talks, I would like to introduce you to an amazing individual, a personal friend of mine. June Gachui is one of Kenya's most sought-after entertainers. She's a singer, actor on both stage and screen, and a seasoned bilingual MC and host. What truly sets June apart, however, is the truth in her performance. She shows up fully with soul, presence, and an honesty that leaves nothing behind. Anyone who has watched or listened to her perform can attest to that. Beyond the stage, June is deeply committed to building meaningful platforms for fellow creatives and bringing the same passion and precision to her business ventures. Through JGIP Consultants, she has become a strong voice in the intellectual property space, helping artists understand, protect, and benefit from their work. Today, she joins us to break down what intellectual property really means and why every artist needs to care about it. Yeah. So in layman terms, what is copyright and what's IP and why is it important for whoever is listening if they are creative?
Okay, so the overall sort of phrase is intellectual property or IP. So that's the discipline within law that helps us to protect the creations of our mind. And what does that mean? It focuses on intangible property, things you cannot see, feel, touch. We can see and touch this microphone, this table, this chair, these earrings. But the artistic sort of intangible side of a song, of a movie, of a book, the story and the journey it takes you on, of art that you see on a wall, you know, it's subject of intellectual property. So intellectual property is broken down into two. Copyright is one, and industrial property is the other. So copyright will cover music, literature, audiovisual works, film, visual art, photography, elements of fashion, software, because software is written code, It's actually a literary work, like a book. In industrial property, we have things that are invented, for example, like, again, the microphone, the laptop through which the software will work to make the thing make sense, a lever, pulleys, pharmaceutical sort of drugs and things like that. So it's more industry, used in industry, trademarks, for example. And we're having a very interesting debate right now in our country about trademarks and what can be trademarked and what cannot. So how are you known to your audience, to your clientele, to your customers? So that's what IP helps us to protect. When you are trading, you must decide, am I offering a good, a product or service, or am I offering something that could be considered art? That will help you know which side of IP you fall. Because there are people who say, I want to patent my TV show, I want to patent my podcast. You can't do that. Patent doesn't cover creative works. Copyright does. Trademark will cover the name of the brand. For example, Anyiko Owoko is the name of the brand. That is what we would trademark.
Okay.
But patent and geographical indications and utility models, all under industrial property. So for those in the creative space, you are squarely under copyright.
Yes.
You want to register your work, your songs. You want to enter into agreements with the people you collaborate with. If you're part of a record label, or if you're part of a writing residency, these are questions we must ask ourselves right at the outset, not when the song is popular.
This is where even signing the split sheets come in.
Split sheets help you know who played which role. Anyiko wrote verse 1, June wrote verse 2. We collaborated and both wrote the hook. And then somebody walked in and said, hey, I was listening to you guys and I want to suggest this for a hook. Yeah, all three of us now become rights holders within that song. And the split sheet should correctly indicate before the song has gone anywhere, before it's released, before it's published, before it's on air or any DSP platform, you want to document this.
Yes.
Most of the royalty collection bodies will also ask you, or should also ask you, for these documents so they know who to pay the royalties to. Think of Nollywood, Riverwood, all our woods, Hollywood, wanting to use some of this music for their soundtracks. Who are they going to call if they want to license the music? So documenting this right at the beginning,
very important.
extremely important, because music doesn't just live on your phone, on your gadget. It could travel. An orchestra in China might say, I want to perform that live. We've seen our Swahili version of the Lord's Prayer being performed by choirs in the Far East. How the heck did that happen? Somebody may have licensed or may have given transcribed sort of music sheets to them to perform, but some money should have then come back from those types of exploitation.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that artists need to remember around intellectual property is trademark. A lot of our artists have pseudonyms, they have stage names, and then we see them producing merchandise and selling the merchandise. Why don't they trademark their name? We've got a lot of those artists in Kenya whose business names are known names, record labels, the Ogopa DJs of this world, an artist like Nameless who has a name, but his stage name is Nameless. If you wanted Nameless merchandise, that's the kind of thing you would then pursue a trademark registration for, that then secures you for 10 years to exploit that exclusively. So I think artists have a responsibility not to become lawyers, but to understand how this intellectual property rights can help them exploit and monetize. That's what we preach at JGIP. You create, you protect, you exploit, and you monetize.
That is so important. And we were discussing this also before this podcast, just saying like it's crazy because this information has been out there, but it's almost like no one is listening.
Yeah.
There still needs to be more of this information. And that's part of the reason why we're even having this discussion.
Yeah. More avenues for them to hear it.
Yeah.
And more avenues for them to know where they can access it. The truth is, and my honest opinion about us humans and us creatives, I'm including myself in that mix, is that until it has bitten us in the behind, we are not going to do anything about it. So when you have a challenge is when you go, oh my gosh, there was some copyright thing I heard about somewhere.
Yeah.
At least at this point, I've settled on, they know where to go to get the help that they need. They may not sit with the information and understand it the way an IP lawyer like myself does. And that's fine. An awareness that there's something called intellectual property. And as an artist, I need to know where my
Straight.
copyright lies and what did I give to so and so, and what does licensing mean versus what does transferring rights mean. If I at least have a general understanding, I'm good with that, right? I made peace with it. So I think to all the artists listening, you have a responsibility. It's not somebody else's job to come and pick you up. But if we have spent all these years studying and we have podcasts like yours that make people know you can access this information here, then I think we've taken a stride. And there's the Kenya Copyright Board as well. In each of these African countries, there is a copyright body. In Ghana, there's one. In Nigeria, there's one. In Uganda, there's one. In Tanzania, there's COSOTA. In South Africa, there are several. So you can go and get information if you need more clarity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, June.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Coming to VIP Access. Keep rocking, keep curating really dope events as you are, and also keep just educating us. Don't be tired, It's almost like a broken record, but I'm just like, I'm asking June about copyright again. I will actually book an appointment.
I told you I'm okay being asked to repeat 100 times if it will help. I feel like that's my calling, so I will definitely do it.
That's dope.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm very thankful.
Thank you for breaking that down so clearly and for the incredible work you continue to do in empowering artists to understand and protect their craft. We appreciate you. Joining us next is Wandiri Karimi, an accomplished Kenyan artist, guitarist, composer, and music executive. Wandiri has lived many lives within the creative industries, building an illustrious and ever-evolving career that spans both the music business and intellectual property law. From 2016 to 2022, she served as the director of the Kenya Conservatoire of Music, and today she brings a wealth of insight into intellectual property, legal frameworks, and practical ways artists can resolve disputes and safeguard their work. What kind of advice would you give to anybody listening in terms of IP? Because every time they hear intellectual property or copyright, they're like, oh my God, I'm afraid. I cannot even call a lawyer and I cannot afford.
Yes. And I think that's where the first mistake comes.
It pains me too. Like, for instance, for me, it pains me when I meet someone's like, oh, we couldn't even call you because we knew we'd never afford you. And I'm like, oh my God, you would have at least called me.
Yes.
And give me a chance to say something.
But also, at Mimi, I have to say, to be honest, I think there's a fear of the way people assume things are. Because their disputes, most IP disputes, are not really about the material. It's about not agreeing or not understanding what the expectations were.
Yeah.
Let's say for actors, this is something I've had very many times. So you have an actor who has not had work for a year. And then you go for an audition, and then you're told, this is a job. And then you're told, sign up, raka. And you've not read the contract, you've not read anything. You're signing it on set. So you've signed it on set, and then now, a year later or 2 years later, when the thing has expired, now you're calling me and you want to fight. But then I'm like, but you've signed.
Wow. Yeah.
And on that contract, there will be something that says that you sought legal counsel and that you're very aware of what the clauses mean. You're not under duress to sign. So even if I wanted to help you, it's hard.
Yeah.
And there are so many free resources, so many free resources out there that even if it's a lawyer you don't want to hire, it's okay, Sawa. You don't want to give us money, fine, it's okay. There's a class I taught, it's called Copyright X, and it's a free class from Harvard. The Bachman Center runs that class, and they've put all the 12 lectures online. At the time when I was teaching that class, it was being run by the Go Down and an institution called Code IP. It's a free resource. So Copyright X is online. Please go to copyx.org and just learn, or just look at, because it's a buzzword right now. And why intellectual property knowledge is important for you is the thing that you're creating, whether it's a trademark, whether it's a collection. You wear amazing collections, and somebody can go and try and do this thing, but they can never make it the way it has been made. And how you wear it and what it is that you're presenting here is the work of a wonderful artist who, if she goes and she copyrights that collection, then if somebody else copies it and creates, then she can go and say, oh, by the way, you've copied my work, please pull it down. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But guys also need to realize that sometimes it is not, oh, I need to go after that person who's copied me. I also think when people imitate you, then you're very clear that you're doing something right.
Yeah.
People are not copying you because you're horrible. They're copying you because you're doing something right. One thing more people also need to understand, it's not just the cost of disputes. It is the length of time it's going to take you to take a matter through court.
Yeah.
So sometimes court actually, if you ask me, is never a solution for anything.
Really?
It never is a solution for anything because
everybody says, sue them. Send a demand letter.
Demand letter, yes. But sue them, it's going to take you an average of 5 to 7 years for a matter to...
crazy.
In fact, there's need to go and look at when they say, oh, there's been victory against this big guy who stole my work. But look at when that matter was started.
So
look at when it ends.
So you recommend just finding amicable ways of resolving this dispute.
Yes. And the cost of getting somebody to represent you or having a conversation with a lawyer who can sit down and we talk with another lawyer, it will take you possibly a 2-hour meeting. And you finish and you agree. But then also don't forget, if someone is dodgy, it is dodgy. Con men are everywhere. So also who you enter into contracts with is really important. A contract is only as good as the person who signs it. So if the person signing it is a dodgy person, then you have a dodgy contract. So don't make a practice of, if you know a guy has been messing with people's
why
are you entering into that contract? This knee heartache. You want character development. This is what you want. You're signing up for character development. And I think also the other thing is, and this is to institutions that are notoriously against creatives. They will do things against creatives. But also, if you got together and you all said, we are not going to work with this institution because this institution has done 1, 2, 3. Their brand recognition and their brand value is so much higher. And I'm not advocating for Twitter keyboard warriors. I'm not advocating for that. But there is a way that you can work together and collaborate to make people do the right thing also. Because corporates, of course, are very keen on having a very squeaky clean outlook. But if I don't tell you that this corporate did this to me, and I don't tell my neighbor this corporate did this to me, then how are we going to achieve where creatives get paid for what they need to do? You know? Yeah.
And this happens a lot, especially to visual artists and digital artists.
Exactly.
Who create work, put on Instagram, then it goes and it's reprinted and, I don't know, republished or painted somewhere on top of a wall of a building or something, and without credit whatsoever.
Without credit, without anything. And you say, it has happened to me. But then all you need to do is engage, and they're affordable lawyers. Yes.
And I think another thing we will both advocate in this podcast is also let's try and give credit where it's due.
Yes.
Because even for us in the PR world, I do work with various photographers and videographers. You send pictures and videos to different media. And you say, please credit the photographer. They go print something somewhere, they don't credit. And usually when they put their own pictures, you see courtesy of this newspaper. So I'm like, how comes you use the pictures we sent you on a newspaper or whatever, and you did not credit this photographer?
And then they tell you that it's policy, we just say pull. What I've seen is okay.
They've said those kind of things before.
And for me, even when I post on my Instagram, and especially when I know the photographer is a photographer, I will say who took the photograph. Sometimes it's my phone, so that one I won't. Or sometimes, but even when somebody else maybe used the phone or somebody else took a photo with me or for me, then I will credit that person.
Right.
They took it for me, so it looks that way because maybe Nisimu. There's a way we can continuously make people know that what they're doing matters. Because creativity really does matter. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, thank you for your very kind counsel, advice. And even I've learned so much, like before you think of suing someone, are there ways that you could resolve this dispute? But before resolving a dispute, are there certain signs that you can look out for before even signing with individual companies or people? And sometimes people always call and say, sign. I usually say, at least give me a day. Like, let me sit on it.
Sit on it.
Because just look at it,
And most of the time, your intuition will tell you if something is off.
Yeah.
Because I think we don't listen to intuition enough. Because we are always thinking, oh, I need this cash.
Yeah.
But what it costs you in emotional turmoil. Because when you've signed something and the person refuses to pay you for a year, for example,
it's bad.
So for that year, what have you been eating? How have you been paying your rent? How is your car being fueled? But you signed quickly because you felt that you needed this thing. But did you really?
How would you advise creatives to go around this situation where they have to sign for something through somebody else, like through the middle people? And it's okay for there to be middle people. I own an agency. An agency can also sometimes be a middle person, in a sense that we have been hired by a corporate organization to run a campaign with influencers. So we have to get paid a full amount, and then we have to subcontract the people. But I've heard from the industry, a lot of people didn't get their payments from these agencies or this kind of people. So I'm wondering, how do you deal with that? Because when someone told me I wasn't paid from a project from this company, I'm like, not a company of this reputation. What should somebody do in that instance?
Like I said, there has to be like an intuition thing, but also we have to demand better from people. Because I think if I know working with agency so and so, because for actors, influencers, I've had like horrendous stories.
Yeah.
Because there's certain agencies that act in a very...
Let's call it Juakali way. Not professional at all.
So if you know Anyiko's PR agency does 1, 2, 3, then you go and you say, this is who I prefer to work with. Or sometimes even management sometimes also has a way of creating. But then also managers have been doing the most. Managers have also been doing the most. So like I said, associate yourself with people who are of upstanding character.
That is the biggest takeaway. Because there will be someone somewhere doing some monkey business.
And when you're in the forest and there's monkey business, then you expect all sorts of things to be thrown at you.
Yeah.
But if you create a tribe around yourself and the kind of clients that you want to keep and take, because part of the reason why I say to people, don't rush to court. Because when you're rushing to court in IP matters, unless you're going to the copyright tribunal, which is full of people who have IP knowledge, you can go somewhere and somebody does not understand what IP is. So there are rulings and judgments that are not good law in IP. So you went to court with an expectation that the law would be followed, but the law was not followed because the person did not understand intellectual property in the way that it should have been interpreted. Yes. So for me, in fact, one of the things that I'm strongly lobbying for, and I hope it finally happens, that we have an IP court. If we do so, then it means if you have an IP court, then you just deal with IP matters and that's it. I hope it happens, but like it's a long, long conversation unless somebody somewhere then sees the need for it. Because everything, of course, when you're making your proposal and you're making your policies, everything has to come with, how much does it cost the exchequer? And when you're dealing with policies, those are all those conversations. But more so, if people can buy into the idea of mediation and buy into the idea of before you get into something, know what it is you're doing and what the expectations are, then your disputes will not be many. And then if corporates then act right, because you are a corporate, if you're an agency and you're not paying your creatives, why? How do you expect that person to come back next time? And yes, there's one born every day, but if you empower whichever influencer that you're working with, it means what they will be able to imagine for the next campaign will be even better than the last, because they're not worrying about rent, they're not worrying about food, they're not worrying about, the school fees and whatever other things that people are spending money on. But there are agencies, as you know, who don't care. They'll just tell you utanipeleka wapi. In fact, it is that utadu. That was the utadu way of doing things. And my hope is the more we grow these SMEs that we are running into bigger companies, that our SME attitude and our SME way of doing things, when we are big conglomerates, that we then will act right. So I would want to work with you and you work with me, but then the way we treat each other has to be a way that people now expect nothing less. Because as I say, Gen Z will show us things. You think you're going to do that to Gen Zs, they will show you things. Gen Alpha is coming. We will see what they will show. Will show us after that. But yeah, let's build good businesses.
Women. So thank you so much for your contribution. And thank you for using all your knowledge very well and, being gracious while at it.
We must. Because there's not many of us in this. And we support each other. That means we grow. Because, these are things I'm observing with businesses. Like if you look at whatever's happening in, let's say even Nigeria, if you look at what they're doing in terms of creating content and supporting each other, they are working as a team. So when you see them in the Hollywood space, they are all calling each other and they're all moving together, and it is deliberate. I know it's been years of work, but we also need to do the same and also join our African siblings in doing whatever it is we need to do to create the industry that we need.
It really is a collective effort.
There is nobody. Can you do it alone?
No, not even.
You can't. So if we get together, I really feel that our continent has so much to offer. And we are so beautiful as people. We have so many stories to tell. And everybody wants to tell our stories, but we are the only ones who can tell our stories our way.
Yeah.
But how do we...
That's our superpower.
It's our superpower. We are working superheroes, and sometimes we don't even see it in ourselves. So if I can elevate you, I'll do so. If you can elevate me, do so. And then when we do so, we won't even believe where we're going. You know, it's those things that I feel there should have been a class elevating one another. In primary school, like we do it all the time. But, now we are learning now and we'll do it.
Thank you for breaking down the legal realities artists face and for offering clear, practical guidance on navigating intellectual property, dispute resolution, and long-term protection in the creative industries. These conversations carried on beyond the studio at Industry Talks, where Wandiri was joined by David Kate, another leading intellectual property expert, and Paul Kaindo from the Kenya Copyright Board. Let's listen to the experts talking to the artist. We have David Kate, who is an associate at James T. McCurry Advocates, tackling IP, media and entertainment law, and data protection, among other challenges facing Kenyan artists with regards to IP. He's also an advocate at the High Court of Kenya. Some of the roles he served include being a legal consultant for Boomplay Music, Vizkit, Easy Music Corporation, Some Fine Day Picks, in National Geographic, among others. Some of the personalities represented by David include Calligraph, Nikita Kering, Wakadinali, Nonini, Aroboy, Nadia Mokami, Trio Mio, and Chris Kaiga. Some key copyright cases litigated by David include Bamboo versus Safaricom Limited and MCSK, Nonini versus Brian Mutinda, Kenyan Dictionary versus Jumia, Sam Array versus Nyashinsky, and Jemima Thiongo versus Safaricom and MCSK. Put your hands together for David Kate.
You have the right to publicly display. You have the right to all these things that protect your work, that make it special and give you the right to own the copyright in it. For anyone else to be able to use your works to do something else, or to use your works for any other purpose, they need to have a license or consent from you. So let me give you an example. We've also started having AI-generated music. And some of you have seen Drake jumping on the Mzabibu challenge, and all these kinds of things. So for you to sample a song, you need to do two things. One, seek permission. Two, pay the license. So you get a license and pay the license fees. You can be given the license for free if you negotiate for yourself a better way. A lot of people have sampled music. Wu-Tang Clan, the first album was all sampled work. Dr. Dre has sampled a lot of musicians, and I saw people on the timeline saying that he actually didn't do anything original. But at the end of the day, you need to know why he wasn't sued and why you will be sued. And the reason is people get clearances. When P-Unit was releasing You Guy, we had to seek clearance from Jamaica. We reached out to Chakademas and Plies for them to allow P-Unit to use You Guy. So when you tell me that people right now are just jumping on a track for Jua Kali that was released in 2001, the only reason as to why Jua Kali is not reacting and all these other artists are not reacting on you guys doing urban tone on their tracks is because you guys have a cancel culture. You wake up, you decide you're cancelling Jua Kali today, and you will talk everything you want to talk smack on social media, but because you do not know what the law says about it. But if all these people were to be sued, some of these artists will never even afford to go to a studio again. So for you to use any copyrighted works, you need to say please and you need to say thank you. And I'm putting it in simple terms. Please and thank you. Get a license, pay for it, then you can jump on the track. But if you do not have this, do not use any other person's works for your own benefit. Do not recreate it. Do not try and do other things. And there are two doctrines I wanted to discuss. I had listed them. There's a doctrine of overlap. Let me start with the doctrine of overlap. when you are creating musical works, the producer and the artist, I'm giving you a real-time situation. The case for Sam Are and Yashinsky. Yashinsky got that techno deal, and the song Watch Watch was used. There's a split sheet that an artist and a producer sign before the music is released. That becomes like the logbook to that work. It tells you who owns what and to what percentage. And since both of you are on this document, if you share publishing rights in that work, one of you cannot benefit to the detriment of the other. And that is why I tell artists it is very important to do split sheets before you leave the studio, because if the song becomes a hit song and somebody wants to use it in a publishing deal, you won't agree on the percentages. So do the percentages, do the split sheet as early as possible for you to be able to get this money when the money falls due. You never create a hit song. A hit song is created by the people listening to the song. They're the ones who decide if it's a hit or not. You get? So always be cautious on how you create. Now, this doctrine of overlap describes a situation whereby we have two people with overlapping rights in the same composition or works. So there's a producer, there's a musician. Both of them have rights. One has rights to the underlying music, the other one to the lyrics. When a situation like this arises, is why you need a split sheet to determine who owns what and to what percentage. On the doctrine of fragmentation, let me give you an example of Julius Caesar. How many of you have read Julius Caesar by Shakespeare or know about it? And even Merchant of Venice. These books were translated into Swahili by the estate of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. They're the ones who collect royalties because they have copyrights to the Swahili translation of these books. Now, when we come to Kenya, we have these traveling theater groups that they would want to perform these books. If you want to perform these adaptations or translations of whatever works have been done, you'll also need to get a license before you benefit from the works of another person. You remember that concept? So if you decide to infringe on Mwalimu Julius Nyerere's works, Juliasi Caesari, the translation of Julius Caesar, it means you're infringing on his works and also Shakespeare's works, because it is the same thing that has been fragmented. For you to be able to infringe on one, you're infringing on all. And when you have overlap is when all of you have the rights to the same work, but you need to decide who owns what and when. So when you understand these two concepts, you'll understand why an artist will put a music online, then it is pulled down by the producer. Because there's no split sheet, or he hasn't been paid his money. So these things will continue happening until when people respect each other's rights, read the law, and agree to do agreements. Have I answered your question?
Ukiweka mziki Spotify, kuna option ya kusema hii ni cover. Lakini mtu anafaa kuendaje akifanya covers?
Kuna artists, the ones like Calligraph, when he releases a song, he can release also the track and ask the public to jump on the track and flow on it. That one you already have permission from the artist. But if today I just decide to do a cover for any other artist's song without their permission and I want to monetize it, keyword is you benefiting from that cover without the permission of the original composer. That's the problem. So there's that option. When you put a cover, they will know that this is a cover. So because when I want to sue Spotify, I will sue the person who did the cover, and I'll also sue Spotify for hosting copyright infringing works. You get? So what usually happens is you have to state if it's a cover or not, and also if you can get consent of the original composer if you want to monetize your version. That is the only way you're going to avoid being sued. Yeah. Answer the question.
Hello, my name is Bilha. I'd like to ask about copyright internationally. I think we've talked about it in terms of Kenya. I'd like to know how copyright works in African context and also internationally.
The Berne Convention is what every country sort of ascribes to in the way we deal with it. So it's an international standard for it. Yes, copyright is different in different jurisdictions. For example, in the US, the copyright length is 70 years, not 50 years like most of the rest of the world, where the life of the author plus 70 years. There's a class called Copyright X, a class done by Harvard that you can actually go through a 12-week program or 12-lesson program, copyrightx.org. If you type that either on YouTube or even on the net, you'll be able to go through the material. So they've given out the material for free, and you can just go through every single thing, and that's the US jurisdiction. But generally, all the signatories to the Berne Convention sort of have the same sort of structure and the same way that they deal with copyright.
And then right next to me is Mr. Paul Kiarie Kaindo, who is from the Kenya Copyright Board, Kekobo. Paul Kaindo is an advocate also of the High Court of Kenya, specializing in copyright and related rights. He's currently a chief legal counsel at the Kenya Copyright Board. Paul has experience in copyright infringement litigation. He's a member of the Law Society of Kenya and the East Africa Mediation Training Institute, and is a trained court-annexed mediator, among others, intellectual property disputes. He holds a master's degree in intellectual property.
Probably to write on that, because I've been engaged in litigation, particularly prosecution of copyright infringement. We always say that copyright laws are territorial. So like she says, every country has its own copyright laws. However, the Berne Convention sets the minimum standards. So as each country is making its laws, there are basic minimums that have been provided by these international instruments. So every Berne Convention member is bound to follow that. So if you create a copyright work here in Kenya, it is protected in those other Berne Convention member states internationally, if I would say that. However, if there is an infringement, for example, you are a Kenyan, then your work is infringed, say in Ghana, for example, you will not use the Kenyan law to enforce that infringement in Ghana. You use the national laws in that particular country. So we have national laws, but then there is the Berne Convention that sets the minimum. And yes, your work is protected in all those Berne Convention members, who are basically almost everybody who is a UN member state.
She just asked in regards to copyright internationally. A scenario, for example, there are these competitions where you get to submit your work, and at the end of the day, maybe there are cash prizes and all that. So a scenario whereby you submit, you go through the process, the rules and all that. Once the winners are announced, they acknowledge, yes, you won. But when it comes to the payout, it's all of a sudden it's a back and forth, and they refuse to actually pay you for the work that you submitted. So what is the process into now handling such a situation? And to be specific, the country being spoken about is India. So it's a thing between Kenya and India. So what is the process to handle that? And also on the question of publishing this to David, I'd like to understand what is the process, rather, what are the requirements to actually approach a publisher to, get your work out there?
I'll take the publishing question. First of all, you need to look at the publishing agreement that the publisher is giving you. So the percentages are usually 70-30 or 60-40 or 80-20, depending on how you'll negotiate with them, by companies that want to do advertisements. So once he secures the deal, they take their percentage, they pay you the difference. Long ago, we used to have these publishers sign an agreement where you vest your copyrights, because they cannot go and negotiate over works that are not theirs. You transfer your copyrights to them so that they can enter into an agreement with any other entity to be able to get a publishing deal for you. But right now we have administrative publishing, whereby you do not have to vest your copyrights to them. They can just do admin work, get the deals for you, then you pay them a percentage without having to transfer your rights.
But you spoke about the music side. Would it be very similar to the literature work?
For literature, it's absolutely different, because now the person who wants to publish you first of all has to have interest in your works. They have to have distribution channels. Then they have to negotiate on how much they're earning per copy. So for music, it's totally different from books. Here you'll have to shop for your own publisher based on the quality of their work, based on their distribution channels, based on the percentages they also offer you. Then you sign the contract that for every copy, because now you cannot be able to pay them upfront, you can decide for every copy that sells, you take a percentage. And books have an ISBN number, you know that. You've seen your books have that ISBN number at the back. Music has the same thing. It's called an ISRC code. An ISRC code identifies your sound recording anywhere in this world where the song is used. If you enter your ISRC code right now, you can be able to see where your music is being played, demographics. You can get to know where to go and do your show based on how well the music is downloaded or streamed in that country. So all these works have an identity of their own.
I'll jump into the other question, which was the first one. I feel that is more of contractual issue. So you enter into a competition. I'm sure there are documents you sign. These are contracts. So you need to read between the line how the payments are actually being made. And again, being made in a different country, there is always a clause where there is cross-border contracts. There is a clause on jurisdiction at which law is applicable. So you need to read that and understand the law that is applicable there. So for you, because I feel that you're asking what can you do where payment becomes unasumbuliwa sana. So you need to look at that jurisdiction clause, which law is applicable, and then you enforce it in that country. So for example, if it says that the law applicable here is India, so you need to enforce your rights in India. So that means you need to get a lawyer in India or in Kenya who now pursue your payments in India, because again, the laws are territorial.
Hi, my name is Gadhiru and I'm a songwriter. So what happens if you're commissioned to write for an artist? But okay, in the case of writing music, what I've observed is it's difficult to decide what the splits look like before you write the music, because you cannot guarantee what part of the work you wrote will qualify to the last product. So what if you write the music and whatever percentage qualifies, however, the artist decides to evade putting you on the splits and also paying you the royalties you deserve for songwriting? You can also, in this case, you can also prove translation of ideas. So you have proof of showing, I'm the one who wrote this and sent this music, or you have demos that you can showcase, I sent this as proof of that. What legal measures can you take, or what is the solution when you find yourself in a position where you're not included in the splits, you're not being able to be paid your royalties as a result of that? However, you can prove that you translated that idea into the final product.
I'm actually in an exact situation. I was in studio and someone is trying to refuse to put me on the credits, lakini ataniona. But the whole thing is, I think also as songwriters, we have the issue of the contract that you sign. So that song split sheet is only as good as the person who's signing it. So the issue is, if you're dealing with a thug, the guy will do thuggish things. So I would urge you, tell everybody about it, because people need to know how this person operates so that somebody else doesn't go through it. But also putting things in writing is possible. So I'll tell you what I am going to do. So I was in studio 2 weeks ago and the person sent me the split sheet. We had the discussion about the split sheet, but then when it came time and the executive producer was there, but when it came time for putting in the credits, I sent him what I had, but he refused to send what he needed to send. So I have found his email address. I have found the email address of the executive producer. So I'm going to write and I'm going to make us think. So now we will wait and we'll see if he's going to try and produce that song. And my name is on it. And yes, I do have proof. I recorded the session. So you just have to be very vigilant, because again, as you know, copyright is a private right. It's you who has to push for it. But please tell everybody who that person is so that other people don't go through the same.
Also, for quick solutions, you can start by striking that song on YouTube. Oh, it's not out yet. Then you can do a cease and desist through a lawyer. But once it's out, you can strike it. And then, just strike it on YouTube and they will have now to address you. Because if you strike 3 times, the channel is taken down. Use it as a suit and a shield at the same time. Strike it so that you get the attention. But if also they are adamant, just bring the whole channel down.
It's so good to be in the presence of experts. Like, any question will be answered. Sometimes you're Googling, you're like, I don't know whether this story is current, especially the things for the royalties, So thank you so much for your time, for your skill, for your knowledge, for sharing. And I also want to thank you all for coming through, for asking questions, for being a very good audience. I also want to thank Gachui Institute Nairobi for supporting these industry talks and for supporting arts and culture generally. It was really refreshing to have the Kenya Copyright Board partner with Industry Talks and Gachui Institute and me for this specific edition of this podcast and Industry Talk series. Everybody who was listening, thank you very much for your time. Please, if you know an artist or a creative who needs to register their copyright in Kenya, send this to them. If you know of any artists who might value this information, share it to them. If you'd like to leave your feedback, please message me on Anyiko PR, Anyiko TV, or Anyiko Owoko. We are all over social media on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of them. We are everywhere. So we'd like to get your feedback about what other events and conversations you'd like us to host
right here at Industry Talks and on this podcast, VIP Access. Until then, bye-bye. VIP Access Season 5 is proudly supported by the Gachui Institute, Nairobi.